Great. I think with that, we'll call the regular meeting of Township Council for Monday, September 11th to order. Of course, I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional territories of the Coast Salish peoples, and in particular, our valued relationships with the Kwantlen, Katzie, Matsqui, and Semiahmoo First Nations. With that, can I get a motion to adopt the agenda? Before that, though, I'd like to see if anybody would move it, removing delegations C3 and C4. Moved by Councillor Van Popte, seconded by Councillor Rent. So if anybody wishes to make an amendment to that, but we are moved currently with removing delegations C3 and C4 and not adding the additional delegations. Councillor Richter.
Are delegations C3 and C4 here right now? Because if they are, I think we should give them the courtesy of listening to them.
So there was other delegations on the same item, and I believe that I'll be recommending to council that we schedule item G2 for a public hearing.
Well, I'm glad G2 is going to go for a public hearing, but I don't understand if the people have made the time to come here today, why we wouldn't listen to them.
There was multiple other ones. I think there were, how many in total were there, Ms. Bauer? I think the number started to increase, total of 5.
I believe there was 5.
5. So I think that warrants equal treatment for all to allow a public hearing and not hear from delegations.
Well, I am against not allowing these people who have made the effort to come to a council meeting to speak today. They're here in the room, they should be allowed to speak.
And they'll be heard at the public hearing. Assume council agrees with that. Councillor Ferguson, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that, thank all the people for coming that wanted to speak today. The opportunity will come again, and it's more than a general opportunity than voting on. This vote will be held off until after the public hearing. So it gives you more than ample time to talk to the many people that have sent us emails or phone calls. So I think I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. So with that, I'll call the question on the agenda as amended. That carries with Councillor Richter opposed. Item B1, regular council meeting minutes from July 24th. Can you motion, please? Moved by Councillor Rent, seconded by Councillor Pratt. Seeing no discussion, call the question on B1. That carries unanimously. Item B2, adoption of minutes from public hearing on July 24th. Get a motion, please. Moved by Councillor Rent, seconded by Councillor Van Popte. Seeing no discussion, call the question on B2. That carries unanimously. Move on to delegations C1. So on the agenda, just clarify, there are only 2 delegations with the amendment by council. Items C1, delegations from Adia Lewis. Please come forward. Just put your mic on. There you are.
Hi.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor Woodward and Council, for the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Adia Lewis. At the last session of the last meeting of council, I was here with 9-year-old Anna, 10-year-old Blake, and we came to witness Jacqueline Anderson present a persistent dream of support and growth for single parents and other community members of City Council. Jackie's spirit, single parents in recovery and today, has always been strong and bright. She carried that continuously burning torch of love in her heart and gave every person with whom she interacted the opportunity to keep their torch lit or to light it if it had flickered and died. And she has since passed away very shortly after that, and so I just want to honor her. Take a moment to honor her today. The council strongly supported her proposal, and as one of the single parents who supported Jackie and who worked with her on her vision for strengthening single parents and not having us be this vulnerable demographic, I am carrying forward with other moms on that same path. As of March 31, 2019, according to MCFD statistics, about 500 children experienced recurrence of maltreatment following reunification and were returned to care. The number of children who fall through the cracks with no protective intervention is likely higher, as in my experience as a foster parent, parents who feel unsupported and afraid of what they perceive to be punitive separation with no real solutions, avoid observation, and they encourage their children to do the same. Therefore, we know that hundreds more children in British Columbia are at risk, and the ministry's model of separation and return with no real continuing growth and no real way to support continued growth means that there are thousands more children in British Columbia every year at risk. This is a public health crisis. It's not a small concern. I live in the township of Langley in Aldergrove. I used to be a foster parent with the Ministry of Children and Family Development. I have begun to foster families instead of only fostering children to help close the gap of vulnerability through which so many of our families have fallen, and to help ease the load off our overburdened government, which cannot do the work of raising and providing safe homes for struggling children and their families. What does fostering families mean? It means that vulnerable single mothers, at this time for me, it's just single mothers and their children, although there is also a need for single fathers and their children to be supported, live in our home together in a safe setting, in our home, in our family home. Parents are assessed and seen to be safe to be housed with their children. Each family currently faces housing instability, and or each of the moms and children are fleeing some kind of domestic concern. I've been working full-time as the host parent in our pilot home for the last 4 years with no funding and with all operating costs having come from my pocket, because I have been advocating with the government for the last 12 years to include this as a model in the child protection system. And although so many of them say it's a great idea, why aren't we doing it? It's not. It's just not on their radar at the moment. That's the response that I've gotten. And as a foster parent, I saw how many children were returned home to unstable settings with parents who were afraid. I had one mom who just had not been diagnosed with anxiety, who was incredibly, incredibly unstable because she felt like she had no support, and who physically and mentally and emotionally had harmed her children, and who denied that to the social worker, because when I said to her, ask for the support that you need, she said, my lawyer says that if I ask for support, my children are not going to be returned to me. I spoke to the social worker, and she says, unless mom admits, because only the children reported, there is no way that the social worker could do anything. So I was just like, how about if they are in this stable setting with someone who's always available to support, someone who's always available to keep an eye on the children instead of only having daycare as the eyes on the children in the community. And she said, we'd love to do that, but that's not a part of the model and not legislatively a part of the model at the moment. And so there's nothing really we can do. Consider Angie. Angie's max capability for rent in a setting that fits her being is between $1,200 and $1,400, but her current rent is $1,700 because she made a decisive move to leave her abusive partner of 10 years on assurance from several reputable community advisors that she would be able to access support resources. That has not been the case. So she feels as if she has exhausted every avenue and sees no other recourse but to return to her abusive partner with their 9-year-old son and take a chance that he will be okay 90% of the time. I know that transition houses are all full because I've tried to get moms in. There's a significant wait list for subsidized housing, and a person does not qualify for rental assistance if they're already accessing disability or income assistance allowances. That 10% risk that her abusive partner will be okay seems to me to be a dear price to pay in an era when femicide, the murder of women by men or intimate partners, has increased by 27% in Canada within the last 3 years. Combined with the other long-standing aspects of gender inequality and trauma, and you can check those stats at www.femicideincanada.ca. Combined with the other long-standing aspects of gender inequality and trauma that becomes generational as children are raised in these environments, I'm hoping that the township will be able to support our vision. We formed a society in 2020, I Am With You Fellowship, so that we can foster families together. They're a group of 5 of us, 5 women, one of whom was Jacqueline Anderson, who's now passed away, so we need to find a replacement board member for her, so that we can support each other together. Yesterday evening, I looked out into my backyard and I saw 3 moms. 3 moms, one of whom her partner shook her infant daughter at 2 months old, and she was in the hospital. Like, she's suffered significant brain injury, now has seizures, and was not expected to be able to do anything well developmentally. And because she's been in our setting, her pediatricians and her assessors at Sunny Hill are just really amazed at how well she's done, because mom is supported, mom can go to work, and the little one stays with us during the day, and we do all the supportive things that she needs for supportive development healthily. And another mom who's fleeing abuse from a partner who's currently become addicted to substances and was going to be homeless, and she's with us. I looked out in the backyard, saw them all together, supporting each other, seeing for the last, 8 years, what that kind of support has done for single moms in our community in this township of Langley. We started a support group through Acts of Kindness that was kind of supported by Acts of Kindness, that was called Single and Strong, that the community, the other organizations in the township of Langley referred our single moms to. And we've had single moms who never thought they could go to school, become EAs, now with the hope of becoming a teacher, becoming involved in like strong relationships, finding counseling support and that kind of thing. That's what we do. And we know that instead of having people struggle on their own, connection is the solution to create the possibility.
I just wanted, is there some way you can just sort of move it along to, because I have a
What I
couple
want.
questions, because you're well over your 5
Right.
minutes, which is fine.
Oh, sorry.
It's an important issue, and we're happy to have you
Right.
tell some of these
So
stories.
what I want
If you
is,
could just sort of get down to what you're looking mayor
what
and
I'm looking
council
for.
to do. Yeah.
What I'm looking for is a way for us to start funding the model that we are operating already. I've already been doing it for 4 years. I've been doing it on my own, really, and that's not sustainable, especially because now I have long COVID. I got a tour attendant. I got my own kids. I'm a single mom, and I have been a single mom for the last 14 years. I adopted my girls, and I understand the struggle. And so there has to be a way that we can, as a community together, do something to strengthen our families in our community.
Now, have you met with some government MLAs that are very close nearby to you geographically? Because this typically would be seen as a provincial
legislative.
financial responsibility. Right?
I have emailed them. I met with, as a part of a forum with the Minister of Children and Family Development as part of forum of foster parents with the Foster Parents Association. And the response from them is still, this is not currently a part of our model. And so it's basically, that's not how we do things. And I'm just like, I know that's not how you do things. And all the evidence shows that how you do things can shift, and we can be more supportive and be more successful if we do things just a little bit differently. It's been the last 14 years. So yes, I have met with people, and the response is just the same. That's not how we do things.
But have you met with the MLAs with direct
In our-
access in our area? Yeah, maybe not the one out of power, but the one in government in the area that I think would be very supportive of theoretically advocating for you. Have you met with some of these MLAs that could have a direct access to ministers?
No, I only met with the Minister of Children and Family, the current Minister of Children and Family Development.
So what I can potentially do is ask our local MLA here in the Willoughby area to meet with you as well.
Okay, perfect.
Councillor Van Popte, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for being here. I've been a single mom for 9 years myself, and at the time where I first found myself in this position, the biggest challenge was that I had just entered the workforce. I'd been a stay-at-home mom for predominantly both my children's life, and the biggest challenge and hurdle that I had was actually the stigma with landlords trying to rent to a single mom.
Yes.
It was very difficult to find a place, and I'm hoping, in the last 10 years that we've maybe changed our perceptions a little bit. But I really commend what you're trying to do here, and I hope, I was going to suggest the same thing as Mayor Woodward here, is that you reach out to our local MLA and see if she can start advocating on your behalf as well.
Wonderful, thank you.
So I'll have my office follow up with you on that at least. And when you say support financially, do you have any specifics?
Currently, the house in which we live, the combined rent is like $4,500 plus utilities, and really it's just like to maintain the housing in a stable position. So either like half of the rent or whatever it is, so that we can just make sure the housing is stable, and the rest of it we take care of ourselves, like finding community resources, just creating a fund that helps moms, single moms especially, as Councillor Van Popter said, be in market housing and not be in an unstable, vulnerable position with their families.
I understand. That's helpful. Thanks. Councillor Richter.
I noted in the materials that you submitted for the delegation that you've got a comment here, our funds are depleted and we need $5,000 to keep the home open for the next 2 months.
Yeah, our landlord, she needs $6,000 per month really to be able to allow us to stay in the house. And I'm just looking for a way to make that happen.
Okay. So what happens after the 2 months?
Oh, we'll continue. Like, I have been doing it for 4 years, and I'm just going to keep finding a way to do it. Right now, I'm looking at other organizations as well, partnering with us so that it's something that not only happens just in our one home. Really, like, my hope, my vision is to see that our community picks up this as just a part of our being, and other families will open up their homes too. Just having families be together, supporting each other.
Okay, so this $5,000 that you need for 2 months.
Yeah,
That's your pressing issue
that is my
right now.
pressing need right now. Yes.
Oh, and if the $5,000 can come through right now to get you through the next 2 months.
That would be wonderful.
Then at the end of that 2 months, you will have had time to come up with
Yes.
alternate funding sources?
Yes, look to continuing funding sources, yes.
Okay. Well, Mr. Mayor, if we've got the opportunity, before we get to other business, I wouldn't mind that we make a motion to provide the $5,000 from council contingency to at least allow them the opportunity to get through the next 2 months and have the chance to get on with the meetings that your office will attempt to organize.
You can certainly consider that under other business. Councillor Ferguson, go ahead.
Well, I think it's important to note that, by the way, thank you very much for coming. You've already answered one of your also meeting out with other organizations, and it's important to note before council can do anything, we're also a child of the province, both British Columbia and the federal government. Yes. And myself being a teacher, you know, there's lots of people that in my program have special needs that had to get funding through different agencies where we as a school board couldn't provide that funding, just we as a council. And I think, Mr. Mayor, we do have a policy of what we can or cannot give to based on our policy. So I think it's important to note before we make any motions or any distribution of funds, we should look at what our policy is and decide accordingly, or else refer it back and decide how it could be distributed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
you.
Councillor Van Popta, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, just one more quick question. Have you explored creating like a charitable organization so that it makes it easier to do donations like this?
We have, and we did form a society, but the administrative process is like really involved, and it's a little beyond our scope. And so we're also looking for mentorship and support in making sure that all those pieces have come together so that we can run efficiently as a nonprofit.
Great, thank you. Not seeing any other speakers. I appreciate you bringing this to us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next delegation, item C2 from Robert K. Please come forward.
Afternoon, Mayor Woodward and Council.
Great.
Might need some assistance with the...
Yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, Mayor Woodward and Council. Thank you for the opportunity to present in front of you today. It should come as no surprise to anyone in this presentation theater that we are in the midst of a housing crisis, nationally, provincially, and locally. Whether welcoming newcomers to the country, hosting international students, refugees fleeing war-torn countries, interprovincial migration, or evacuees displaced by forest fires, it's clear that we are running at a significant housing deficit. Premier Eby's Housing Supply Act, which came into effect May 31st of this year, sets targets for municipalities. Municipalities that meet those targets will get provincial cash for amenities such as parks, bike lanes, and recreation centers. Those that don't meet the target, face the risk of being overruled by the province, which has the powers to rezone entire neighborhoods to create more density, courtesy of the Vancouver Sun, April 3rd, 2023. Further, the Homes for People Action Plan has been developed to create more housing supply and more support for those risking homelessness, as well as to tackle the short-term rental issue, which only serves to further limit the supply of rental units available. This action plan will focus on fast-tracking the permit process and development, as well as rezoning existing housing supply to add more density. This fall, the provincial government will introduce further legislation that will legalize all secondary suites, announce a program to offer loans of up to $40,000 to existing homeowners to build secondary suites in their homes, which already appears on the BC Housing website, and legislation to allow up to 4 units on a traditional single-family detached lot. Langley has been selected as one of the 47 municipalities which will take part in this program. The City of Victoria has already enacted bylaws permitting 6 units on a single-family lot, and the City of Vancouver is holding a public hearing this week to do the same as part of their Missing Middle plan. Although the township has a tremendous reputation in the region for streamlining the permitting process, construction completions are still a ways off. And in this current elevated interest rate environment, sadly, developers have decreased housing starts over the past year. As we continue to welcome more residents to our province, it's imperative that we take immediate steps implementing the aforementioned housing strategies in order to accommodate the rapid increase in population. One of those options is repurposing our existing housing supply via proactively rezoning secondary and garden suites to create higher density. It's coming down the pipeline anyway. Other municipalities have begun to do so, and Premier Eby and Housing Minister Ravi Kahlon are going to want to see what initiatives the selected municipalities are taking to meet their housing targets. Please allow me to introduce you to Gloria. She has authorized me to speak on her behalf here today. She has also authorized me to divulge that she is in her 8th decade on the planet and has lived 40 years plus in Langley. Gloria is a widow living on a fixed income and pays about 40% below market rent for her home. Gloria is on the waiting list for subsidized housing and has been so for many months now. Gloria is a great grandmother and a great person. This is Gloria's basement suite. It was built in 2006 for the original owner of the property, another grandmother who occupied the suite while her daughter and grandchildren lived on the 2 floors above. The suite was built at the same time as the rest of the 3-story home, using the same materials, and is a realistic example of basement suites in the neighborhood. It was also built to code. What is the issue? Gloria's suite has been deemed illegal. Why? Because the property also has a coach house suite, the very density that is called for during this housing crisis and the type of housing that the provincial government is mandating for our community. On July 25th of this year, Township Bylaw Officer Dusterhoff notified me, I'm the landlord, that I was in contravention of municipal bylaws and deemed Gloria's suite illegal. Officer Dusterhoff was both cordial and professional. The officer informed me that the suite would need to be decommissioned. For the uninitiated, what decommissioning this suite entails is very extensive. A full removal of stove and oven. The associated power outlets and wiring must be cut from the electrical panel. The associated circuit breakers must be removed from the panel. The hood fan and all of the ducting must be removed. Washer and dryer and all of the plumbing must be cut and capped off within the walls. All upper kitchen cabinets must be taken out. This essentially makes the suite and living space uninhabitable, and as you can appreciate, it is causing great anxiety for Gloria, especially given the current extremely tight and costly rental market. Where does a 79-year-old widow already paying below market rent and living on a fixed income go? During subsequent communication, Officer Dusterhoff was gracious enough to allow us this opportunity to present in front of you today, Mayor Woodward and Council, and extended a deadline of September 25th for the decommissioning of Gloria's suite. That's correct. 2 weeks from today, Gloria will be without a home. Just like Langley, neighboring Surrey currently only allows for one secondary suite along with a single-family dwelling. A Freedom of Information request filed in 2017 showed that in that municipality, there were 2,332 properties with 2 registered suites, 57 properties with 3 registered suites, and 6 properties with 4 or more registered suites, per the Vancouver Sun, October 23rd, 2017. Across the bridge in Maple Ridge, they already allow secondary suites as well as garden suites or coach house suites on the same single-family lot in certain districts, and have plans in the works to allow both types of suites together through that community.
So again, I hate to interrupt people. I really, you've gone well over the 5 minutes. I'm more than willing to let you have a little bit of additional time.
Sure.
But it is a 5-minute delegation. I've given you, I think, additional 3 minutes now. I'm just wondering if you can try to wrap it up. I think we understand the issue now.
Okay. I'll get to what we're looking for.
I hate to do it, but
No, that's okay,
it is a
Mayor Woodward. I
a
understand.
5-minute delegation. I value the issue and value bringing it to
I
us.
could appreciate that. What we're requesting of you is that council, what I needed to put forward was
Yeah, if there's a few more points, that's no problem. Go ahead.
one important one,
Yep.
that the city of Maple Ridge has already passed a motion that the enforcement of bylaws pertaining to secondary suites be held in abeyance while they work to expand the secondary suite and detached garden suite program. What we're requesting of you is that council pass a motion today that directs current bylaw enforcement to be held in abeyance, i.e. a moratorium, while township works in conjunction with the provincial government to expand the secondary suite program unless there is an obvious nuisance situation present. The same motion that was passed in neighboring Maple Ridge on April 26, 2022. We are in the midst of a housing crisis. The term crisis by definition means a time of intense difficulty, trouble, or danger. So rather than marginalizing Gloria or anyone else who finds themselves in a similar situation, let's adhere to the provincial government mandate of creation of homes for people by allowing people to remain in their homes. I'd like to thank you very much, Mayor Woodward and Council, for the opportunity to speak with you here, and look forward to a timely response that will allow Gloria to remain in her home, as well as to prevent others from enduring a similar plight.
Yeah, so I certainly, actually, Corinna, really appreciate you bringing this to council. I think the Homes for People plan is pretty shy on detail. And I know that I've been, and myself and others have been trying to get detail, but it does strike me as somewhat interesting to be pursuing the closure of a suite that may be provincially permitted within a matter of months.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe that that's something interesting to consider within the standard bylaw process, that if someone, you mentioned in your presentation that it was built to BC Building Code. Is that verifiable by consultants or anything else? Because I think that's the main concern that leads to bylaw enforcement, is that these are built and they're unsafe. How did you verify or know when you made the statement that it was built to code?
I didn't get to get to
Okay,
that
sorry
point,
about
but
that.
No, that's okay.
But if you could
Understandable.
answer the question,
Yeah,
that'd be great. 'Cause
certainly,
it'd
yeah.
give you some more time by asking questions. How about that?
Appreciate that,
Yeah.
Mayor Woodward. I was going to mention that I'm more than welcome to having an inspection of the home to verify those very points, and if there aren't any shortcomings, then would absolutely be willing to bring the suite up to code rather. But it has not.
Challenging to verify if the inspections can't occur while the walls are exposed, right?
I beg your pardon?
Challenging to verify while the walls are not exposed. So there may be some challenges there with plumbing and electrical, but I'm certainly not an expert, but aware of some of the processes that are challenging for staff in terms of verifying BC Building Code for some existing suites. But certainly, I do see where you're going with this, and I appreciate the logic of what you're presenting. Councillor Richter.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I understand it. So the property in question has 2 suites, a basement suite and a coach house
That's
suite?
correct. Councillor Richter.
So are both of the suites illegal or just the basement
The
suite
basement suite is deemed illegal.
is deemed illegal?
Yes.
Probably because there's already a suite in the coach house, right?
You're under current zoning, correct? Yes.
Okay. All right. And how long has the house had the 2 suites?
since 2006 when it was built.
It's 2006, okay. Is there any problem with paying an additional fee?
Absolutely not.
No, no
No.
addition, okay, so
And
no
I
problem
might,
with
I
it.
might add, Mayor Woodward, also no problem if an inspector needs to open up walls or have walls opened up for them to verify all the things, because drywall, putting some drywall up and some mud and some paint is a lot easier than displacing a senior.
But you're, just to, I'll of course go back to Council Richter, but of course the issue being the density, permitted density of what you have currently in terms of dwelling units versus what's permitted by the zoning. Whereas the province, as you've highlighted, may or may not, in the case of the Township of Langley, instantly allow that amount of density.
Right.
Councilor Richter?
Yeah, I can see a potential equity issue, because if we allow 2 suites on one particular property on a street, we pretty much have to do it for all the properties on the street. I'm curious how, was it a complaint that came in about 2 suites? Is that what started all this?
No, it wasn't about the 2 suites. Oddly enough, it was there was a complaint that the coach house tenant had put the enclosure for an entertainment unit between their coach house suite, and there is another coach house suite next door. They'd put that out for the large garbage collection, and the neighbor was upset that that was left between the suites, which may pose a fire hazard. And I asked if that could be taken care of right away. And that item ended up getting moved into the garage of the property until such time that the large item collection was able to remove it. However, by that point, the next door neighbor had already lodged a complaint that there was more than one suite in the home. I don't know whether they were aware that they'd be affecting Gloria, who lives in the basement suite, rather than the person who lives in the coach house suite. But
It's an equity issue. I mean, if you're gonna have 2 suites, then everybody should have the right to have 2 suites as well. And that's I think, probably what is at the heart. I guess this needs some review, I would think.
would we be able to grant an abeyance at this point about bylaw enforcement?
Council can certainly consider that, a member of council wishes to raise that. I think the issue Councilor Richter touches on is a good one in regards to ensuring that the bylaws are equitable for all property owners and taxpayers. And an exemption is not what you're seeking. From what I understand, if there's an imminent possibility, an imminent being a matter of months, my understanding from the minister, a matter of months, your zoning may be provincially permitted on all single-family lots throughout the Township of Langley of a certain size and potentially of a certain service level. It's water, sewer, and so on.
Correct.
And so the equity issue then would be evenly distributed to all property owners potentially by provincial legislation. Yep. Councillor Van Popta, go ahead.
Yeah, so similarly, but a little bit different. How many cars on property do you have?
How many cars on property? 2 currently.
Okay, between the suites and what about off-street parking? How many in both suites and the main house? How many cars?
3.
3, okay.
There is a 2-car garage.
Oh, okay, and it's used 4 cars?
Most of the time, yeah.
Okay, okay.
There's always one in there at the very least.
Okay. Yeah, I'd be leaning probably more towards just kind of like a moratorium on like decommissioning basement suites until we hear from the provincial government on what's going forward. But that's just my opinion at this point.
Consider that, yeah.
Okay,
I don't
thank you.
see any other questions of council, and thank you for that. The Homes for People plan, and when I first saw the delegation, I thought you were here to advocate in favor of it, and now I see that you are for reasons that are more clear. The Homes for People plan, for those that are paying attention, presents a number of challenges for a number of municipalities. Some of my points that I was going to raise are no longer particularly relevant to this specific situation. But if the Premier Eby and Minister Kahlon are looking for us to meet housing targets and want to see results in exchange for funds, I would like to see investments in schools and hospitals that keep up with housing that we're approving. So I also would like to see some targets met
Certainly.
by the province, and it's a two-way street in that regard. Thank you very much for your delegation.
Thank you, Mayor Woodward and Council.
Thank you. Concludes delegations. Move on to item E1, Agricultural Land Commission application report number 23170. Get a motion for the recommendation. Moved by Councillor Rint, seconded by Councillor Pratt. Any discussion on E1? Seeing none, I'll call the question on E1. That carries unanimously. Item E2, Agricultural Land Commission application number 100401. Need a motion, please. Moved by Councillor Rint, seconded by Councillor Pratt. Councillor Richter, go ahead.
Okay, I have a question about these next two because they're side-by-side properties and they're both being asked, they're both approximately being subdivided into two 5-acre lots accessible by panhandles. And there appears to be a significant amount of trees on some of these. Now, this question, I guess, through the mayor to staff, can we do anything about approximate tree loss or understanding canopy loss? Or is that like a moot point because technically these are ALR properties?
Your worship, as part of the agricultural land reserve, our ability to deal with them is very limited. If there's any activity that would be deemed to be pursuing or advancing agriculture, we'd have no jurisdiction as part of a development permit application. That doesn't apply here. There may be some ability to do so. As part of a recommendation to the ALC, all we could do is make a request. It need not be followed or accepted by them because that would be the next level of approval. Having said that, it's not likely that they would want to be involved in tree preservation to the extent that it may collide with agricultural needs.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure that if you're subdividing a property, you'd be able to promote agriculture on the subdivided ones. What about panhandle lots? Is that something that we still permit?
They are still permitted. They're not always the preference, but because of some of the zoning that's in place and the implications on the, I guess, longstanding designations, it's something that we do permit when they meet the other criteria, as these applications do.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Seeing no other discussion, I'll call the question on E2. That carries unanimously. E3, Agricultural Land Commission application number 100396. And another motion, please. Moved by Councillor Rint. Is there a seconder? That seconded by Councillor Ferguson. Any discussion on E3? Seeing none, I'll call the question on E3. Carries unanimously. Item E4, Agricultural Land Commission application number 100440. This is a recommendation to not refer. So I'll move not referral. Is there a seconder to not referring? The recommendation seconded by Councillor Rint. Councillor Richter disappeared. Any other discussion on E4 to not refer? Seeing none, I'll call the question. E4. That carries unanimously. Item E5, capital request, construction works, 80th Avenue. I'll move it. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Rint. Any discussion on E5? Councillor Richter.
Yes, I'm wondering why exactly this is needed and what exactly are the cost overruns coming from? It seems to me on the material that council's been given, this is a medium priority project. So why do we need to finish it right now?
Mr. Bracken.
Mr. Zwag.
Thank you, Your Worship. Perhaps I can start with the scope of work of why we required additional funding. This project involves road widening and front servicing works along 80th and 202A Street. The project is in progress, but we have run into a number of challenges, including third-party utility conflicts, additional costs incurred by our third utility providers. We're also taking the opportunity to make whole or build essentially the ultimate intersection. There's a development across the street, so instead of doing a half project and then the developer coming back, we're doing a full project right now at the intersection. And there's some additional costs and delays with respect to private property restoration works that have arisen since the construction started.
Mr. Zwag, to summarize, 3 of the 4 corners of the intersection are actually under development, and the 4th has a pending application. And the objective is, as this project is underway, is to complete all 4 legs at the same time.
That's correct.
Okay, but the fourth corner that's not currently under development, will we have an opportunity to get those monies back from the project when the project proceeds, if it does proceed?
The project that's before you today is essentially funded 99% of DCCs. So if the developer, regardless of who will do the work, it would be a DCC item. So for these items, the developer would just have to pay relevant DCCs for us to recover that proportional share back.
Is
when they
that the
develop.
intent, that they would pay additional DCCs?
Did not
Pay the
understand question.
DCCs that are due, correct? Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so I look at the staff report, and I think this is great. I appreciate staff coming forward to complete the project. And if projects have an unforeseen circumstances, that there should be no concern or caution to come forward to finish projects. I'm here to support getting these projects done. And I believe that if I were to go on social media and say finishing 202A and 80th is of medium urgency, that I would be descended upon. So with that, I'm going to call the question on E5. That carries unanimously. E6, policy options for vape stores. Now, there is a recommendation. Does anybody wish to move the recommendation? Moved by Councillor Ferguson, seconded by Councillor Rentz. The recommendation is on the floor. Councillor Richter.
Okay, I had difficulty understanding the intent of this and the effect of this. And I was wondering if perhaps staff could explain, does this mean that non-age restricted vape stores can now open anywhere? Because the ban is asking for an outright ban on age restricted vape stores. So does this mean that vape stores can open anywhere and kids can go into them anywhere? I'm not, like, the use of the language in this report makes it confusing.
Thank you, Your Worship. So to maybe back up 2 steps, and we'll address that question. This was a matter, I think, that was the subject of a notice of motion from council to deal with vape stores. There's been some concerns expressed about vape stores, and our overall policy regime has been when there are matters that may have an impact on youth, we tend to be more restrictive. So that's the policy framework within which we're operating, and in this regard, suggesting effectively an outright ban on future vape stores, but recognizing those that are presently existing that would be age restricted and would be grandfathered. The language is a bit confusing, but the effect of this is to achieve basically a prohibition against future vape stores and to allow only those that are existing, which are age restricted, to continue.
Okay, so if that's the case, then why isn't the wording in the motion, why doesn't it drop age restricted vape stores?
Your Worship, it certainly could. I think that's a remnant from that dichotomy that existed previously. So if it provides greater comfort to council, it could actually be removed.
Well, it would seem to me if the intent is to just ban vape stores, period, we need to drop the age restricted descriptor.
Sorry, Your Worship, someone just handed me a document that may impact this. The challenge is that there are stores that are not principally vape oriented, so we do have some situations where vape stores, or where there is the selling of vape materials in some areas, such as, say, a gas station. Those would be regulated, but the store itself would still permit the ability for minors to enter. That's what that reference is meaning in terms of an outright ban on age-restricted vape stores.
Okay, well, to me, this is confusing terminology that will create problems down the road. And I actually think we should refer this recommendation back to staff, maybe to get a legal opinion on the best language to use in it.
Mr. Backman, I trust staff have already done the necessary. They're not going to bring us a staff report that has legal challenges, I would assume.
No, that's correct, Your Worship. It's unfortunate in terms of the dichotomy of the language, but the approach we're taking about recognizing those which exist and recognizing that those that there will be no additional ones has been vetted by legal counsel. Yes.
Councillor Rampavda?
Yes, I too am slightly confused, more in regards to the non-age restricted. So yeah, the convenience stores, gas stations. Is there a way for us to also ban the sales in those type of locations? Can we put controls on the zonings for convenience stores to not be able to sell vape products, or is that strictly mandated by the province?
I would say it tends to be it tends to be mandated by the province. And we've had this again with other sorts of paraphernalia, where there was our ability to regulate the I guess the presentation of them, but not to outright ban them. My suggestion would be, if that's something that is of interest to council, we should likely proceed with this recommendation, and then in addition look at or revisit the potential to actually limit certain types of products in other locations, such as the convenience stores.
Okay, I don't know if I would rather see one universal policy on vape and not have to split it off into age restricted and then, you know, general areas like convenience stores. Vaping is unfortunately one of those topics in my household that is the only topic that causes big friction. So this one is kind of important to me to get right. It's not the age restricted ones that are the problem, which is what this policy is addressing. It's actually the convenience store locations that are the problem for youth. And so I'd rather see a little bit more focus on how we can restrict that.
Is there a solution for that, Mr. Backen? Given the recommendation on the floor to draft a bylaw on the age-restricted issue, how it's just a direction to draft bylaw, essentially. Is there some addition to this or direction you could take that could potentially come back with some additional explanation on the legal issues surrounding banning product within a store?
That's correct, Your Worship. I was going down that path of if we go back to first principles, this is really one of trying to deal with the regulation, or if you will, the prohibition of by way of land use. Regulation of the sale of goods is something that's a bit more challenging, but if council desired, we could proceed to come back with a report that addresses our ability to regulate the sale of goods in existing locations by their category or by type, and that could be something we could either take as direction, or there could be an amendment.
I mean, you could refer this back to staff for more like a more in-depth report that addresses the wider scope, rather than have time wasted drafting a bylaw that may not go anywhere. If you're looking for that information, we could try to have staff bring that back relatively soon.
Okay,
to
well,
get
it was
some further
mentioned we could
direction.
do an amendment as well.
Like, you could do a referral back to staff, Mr. Backen, of the recommendation to get some more information regarding a wider scope of banning vape type paraphernalia. I'm not sure, I don't vape, so I don't know what these stuff is called.
Unfortunately, it's in
And
my
I would never
house.
would vape, so, Mr. Backen, I don't know if there's a suggestion you can make on a referral for a member of council to consider that would capture, I think, the intent.
Perhaps referring it back to staff to consider a wider scope with the inclusion of the prohibition of vaping paraphernalia.
Do you wish to move that?
Yes,
Is there a
absolutely.
seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Richter. So on that referral back to staff, is there any discussion on that? Seeing no discussion on the referral back to staff, I'll call the question on the referral of E6. And that carries unanimously. That also has the benefit of coming back for a more full council. Item E7, Youth Soccer Campus Report Number 23179 with the 4-paragraph recommendation. I will move that recommendation. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Rent. Is there any discussion? Councillor Richter.
Yes, I was disappointed there was no location map in the report. And I'm just wondering why that is, because it's normally we get a location map. I mean, it's sort of broadly there, but it's not in a context of the bigger area.
Mr. Backen?
Thank you, Your Worship. The short answer is some of the property discussions / negotiations have not yet been completed, so we are still working on those, and as such, we wanted to ensure that we had the general location, but weren't specific, as there could be some variations, I guess, to the property, depending upon how those negotiations proceed.
Okay, so, and also, do we know what the total cost of this will be? There's, from what I can see in this report, 3 artificial turf fields, parking lot, underground detention pond.
Mr. Backen, I believe on the cost, when I think staff are going to do some more work on that, as outlined in the report and the recommendation, this has the benefit of no additional land cost. Is that correct?
I think that's correct, yes.
But I believe that this recommendation will lead to that information, Councillor Richter.
So I guess what I'm asking for this youth soccer campus, do we have a budget number in mind for when everything's said and done and the ribbon's cut in the fields, how much the taxpayers will have spent for it?
Your Worship, I'm hesitant only because I'm not sure that we've completed that analysis, and the discussion might have been preliminary I'm not sure if council has allocated that, and that's something that we have to discuss going forward. But Mr. Winslade, maybe you have a better memory than I do in terms of, has there been any public release of the overall project's potential costs?
Thank you, Mr. Batkin. And Your Worship, not for this project specifically, there's been some general numbers considered in the CAC program and in the budget considerations heading into 2023's budget. There was some numbers, but the fourth recommendation that council's considering now is actually giving us the direction to bring back those details in November 2023.
Okay, and so this direction to proceed immediately with conceptual design and cost estimating, what will the cost of that piece of it be?
Worship, council previously, back in May of 2023, approved $1.5 million to do a number of different things, but within that $1.5 million is the money for the design and cost estimating.
Okay, so that 1.5 million has been approved and now you're just wanting to spend it?
Correct.
Okay,
Trying to confirm the scope of phase one is really the goal here.
okay. And what about tree and canopy loss on this property? Will there be any studies done? Will any information come to council on that?
Staff are in the process of reviewing that and doing some geotechnical work. So when the whole project comes forward, that can be included. But in the previous approval from council, there will need to be some tree removal in order to accommodate these facilities. Obviously, playing fields and trees don't mix, but.
Yeah, unfortunately. Okay, thank you.
Councilor Van Popta?
Yeah, yeah, I shot the mayor a text when I was reading the report, because I'm like, when did we go with an underground parkade? But, you know, understanding the constraints of the slope, it's actually a very good use of the land. And then, you know, if we're having some issues procuring other lands around it, I was actually quite happy to see that the underground parkade was added to the scope. You'll generally always get approval from me on stuff like that, because, you know, who wants to look at a big surface parking lot? So I'm happy with this.
Great. Seeing no other discussion, I'll call the question on E7. That carries with Councillor Richter opposed. Item F1, Official Community Plan Amendment, Rezoning Application Number 100270, Bylaw Number 5924 and 5925 for first and second reading. Is there a mover? Moved by Councillor Van Popta. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Rent. Councillor Richter, go ahead.
Okay, so from what I can gather from the report, this area is zoned for 15 units per acre or up to 40 units per acre if underground parking is provided. I'm assuming there's not going to be underground parking, but we're definitely increasing the number of units allowed on this property because of they're going to be smaller units. They're going to be 1,800 square feet instead of 3,000 square feet, which means theoretically they'd be more affordable. Do we have any idea what kind of selling price are going to be put on these units? Will they in fact be cheaper than other townhouses in the area?
Mr. Bracken, I don't think we really worry about that, do we?
We tend not to get involved in market conditions, Your Worship, and it's challenging because the price can vary depending upon not only the land cost and the associated development fees, but also upon the cost of construction at the time this goes to market and the cost of concrete and wood and whatnot. I would say that this application for comfort is probably going to be as affordable as other properties in the area because it is looks to be primarily wood frame construction without underground parking.
I'm not sure I'd use the word affordable, but it'll certainly be a lower price to purchase, being 1,200 square feet on average, smaller. Yeah.
That's correct.
Okay, but we don't know for sure if they will be cheaper. And we're increasing the density, which means that we're going to have more people living there, more need for schools, more need for policing, more need for fire, more need for playgrounds, etc.
Mr. Bracken?
But we don't know if these will be cheaper.
Yeah, the impact on infrastructure is certainly dependent upon the population. The lower square footage, total dollars, makes it more affordable. And the other element, I guess, that's difficult is to predict the market conditions. When this comes to market, what will interest rates be at? It's the classic example. So I understand the hesitancy to use the word affordable because it is has other connotations, but this is certainly going to be something that would have the lower end of market pricing associated with it because of the timing process and type of construction.
The other challenge I would see, Mr. Bracken, here is the age of some of these Gordon plans now. So they were stipulating product or unit sizes to be constructed back in the mid-2000s, almost 20 years ago. So if you're suggesting, you pass a plan saying this would be great to build 3,000 square foot units, but someone doesn't get around to building them for 20 years, requiring that product may no longer be in the best interest of the Township of Langley or the community. So I think that I'm certainly open to it, given the age of some of these neighborhood plans and stipulating product, which maybe we don't want to see anymore.
Okay, so essentially this is density creep, in my opinion. And, but if there was a definite community benefit, like cheaper housing guaranteed, then I could support a density creep, but that's not being offered here. It's just a density creep. The other question, the last question that I had, there's 87 significant trees, only 3 will be retained. A number of trees will be planted, 157. Are all of those replacement trees going to be on site?
Mr. Jarvie?
Thank you, through your worship, to Councillor Richter. Yes, that's true.
So there will be 157 replacement trees on site.
So there'll be 146 replacement trees on site and 11 street trees.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Van Popta?
Yeah, I initially had some concerns, but I had a great conversation with staff on this one. Some of the items that I've concerned have more to do with the site layout, which is done at a different time. This is just a rezoning. There's significant challenges on this lot because of the slope and the grade, which is not something that you generally can see when you're just reading the reports. So for this one, I feel okay at this point. We'll send it to public hearing, and then we can make our comments at third reading is what I was planning on doing.
Yeah, I think that's appropriate. I think this is, it's great to point out this is only for first and second reading to advance it to hear from the public. Yep. So with that,
Oh, sorry.
yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry. Through your worship to staff, what is the average UPA for townhouses in that area? Because we are within the 800 meters of the 200th Street 2040 plan, which does allow for a higher density. What is the average townhouse kind of UPA in that area?
Thank you, through the chair, to Councillor Van Popta. It does range, as noted by Mr. Backen. The designation currently allows 15 UPA up to 40 UPA if you have structured underground parking. So anywhere up to that 40 UPA range you could see as townhousing. But typically, you'd probably see in the 15 to 20 UPA range.
And what's been already approved, what are we seeing?
In this particular neighborhood, we're probably seeing around the 15 to 20 UPA range.
Okay, thank you.
With that, call the question on F1. It carries with Councillor Richter opposed. Item F2, first and second reading for official community plan amendment, rezoning application number 100269, bylaw number 59305931. Is there a mover? Moved by Councillor Pratt. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Rint. Councillor Richter, go ahead.
Okay, I had a question about this with regards to the additional community amenity contributions of $34 million. So, I mean, that's quite a chunk of change, $34 million. But there's also a caveat in here that they don't really have to pay that until the building permits are issued. So, in other words, we might be getting 34 million or we might not. Like, how is this going to work?
Mr. Bracken? That was due to a recent amendment to the council policy for community amenity contributions, if you recall.
That's correct, Your Worship. There is a base limit that's provided in the bylaws itself, which we would be obtaining and then the other balance due, I guess, comes at a building permit stage, so that's when the significant portion of the funds would be paid.
And my understanding that additional bonus density CAC would operate very much like a development cost charge, that it would be paid as construction commences. Is that
That's correct.
That's correct. Councilor Richter?
Oh, that's an interesting new twist, I must say.
Nothing new
Also-
about it, Councilor Richter. It was adopted by council many months ago.
Well, it's new in that it hasn't been in place for the last 20-odd years. It's new to this council. The other thing, the significant trees, there's going to be 311 trees post-development. And I'm wondering, are these all going to be on site?
Through the chair to Councillor Richter, it's to be determined. At this stage, right now, we're dealing with the land use and the OCP amendment and the rezoning. And subsequently, if council were to advance these, we'd be seeing development permit applications with more details on landscaping and landscaping areas, which would include tree numbers.
Okay, so we don't know if these 300 trees will be in this exact location. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions, call the question on F2. That carries with Councillor Richter opposed. G1, bylaws for first, second, and third reading. Councillor Ferguson, did you still wish to, on item G1?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Turn your mic on there.
I'm
There
in
you are.
conflict, Mr. Mayor.
You're on conflict, so
Yeah.
Councillor Richter is declaring a conflict of interest on this.
If I can inquire as to why?
Okay, Mr. Councillor Ferguson?
Yes.
Can you clarify the reason for the clerk? Non-pecuniary.
Thank you.
Thank you. Did I? I apologize. I meant Councillor Ferguson. So with that, Councillor Ferguson has declared a conflict. Is there a mover to this? Moved by Councillor Pratt. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Rinn. Is there any discussion on G1? Councillor Richter.
I'm just wondering why there would be no public hearing on this one. I mean, it sounds like a great idea to have apartments and daycare space.
Mr. Bracken?
Thank you, Your Worship. Provisions to the provincial legislation indicate that public hearings are only required where we're going to be seeing an OCP amendment. As there's no OCP amendment, one is therefore deemed not to be required.
Okay, so why does the actual wording say zoning bylaw 1987 number 2500 amendment?
That's our traditional zoning bylaws, so these applications as they come forward form amendments to the actual zoning bylaws that are in place. So it's really to our zoning bylaw, not the OCPs itself.
Mr. Bracken, my understanding, because I think I got tripped up on that once before, it's an amendment to the zoning bylaw by creating new development zone CD 191, which does not require an amendment to the community plan or the OCP.
That's correct.
Yeah.
CD is a specific zone, and that's
And that's
how
an
we
amendment to
run
the
it, yeah.
zoning bylaw, but it's not amending community plan or the OCP, which therefore does not necessitate a public hearing.
Correct.
Okay, and I note that there are going to be 62 trees post-development. Will these all be located on site?
Thank you through the chair to Councillor Richter. Currently, it's indicated that 53 of those trees will be on site and 9 of them will be off-street trees.
Street tree, well, street trees.
Street trees, yes.
It's in the same area. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Call the question on G1. And that carries unanimously with Councillor Ferguson absent. You can bring Councillor Ferguson back. So, Mr. Bracken, for item G2, I was going to move this as amended to remove third reading and to request that staff schedule a required public hearing. So do you have other language you'd like to give to the clerk on that? Is that good enough?
No, that's sufficient. Thank you.
So I'll move that as amended, seconded by Councillor Rintz, and that would be for item G2. We had a number of emails, a number of delegation requests, and as I mentioned to the members of the public that came here to delegate, rather than make them do it twice, I think have it in the evening, give everyone an equal opportunity to be heard, and not have to have them again delegate again at the public hearing. So with that, we want to hear from members of the public on this one. I think this one warrants a public hearing. So I'll move that. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Wren. Councillor Richter, go ahead.
Yes, and I'm glad this is going to public hearing. I believe the public does need a say on this, although I did have a question with regards to the diagram on page 5. It doesn't show 28A going through. So is 28A actually going to go through with this application or not?
Through the chair to Councillor Richter. Consistent with Council's December 5th notice of motion, getting into the level of details such as servicing and engineering requirements prior to Council's consideration will be, we haven't done that stage yet. Should Council elect to advance this application and grant third reading and approval in principle, we would get into that level of detail. I note, however, though, that it's not physically constructed. However, legally, we have had that portion of road dedicated, and the township does own that portion of road.
Okay, so it's not going to be decided until third reading if it's opened. So if we get to third reading and we decide to go ahead with this, is the road opening gonna be automatic, or do we need to have a provision in third reading that says the road will not be open?
Through the chair to Councillor Richter, if Council wishes to move a specific motion with regards to that, we could definitely take that under advisement. We can work with the applicant and their engineer to try to address some of the comments raised by the public as part of the early submissions, and that may be received at the public hearing should Council grant third reading, and work with them to try and get an agreeable solution there.
Okay, so the question I'm asking, maybe I'm not asking it the right way. If this application proceeds, is it going to be required that 28A be opened?
Through the chair to Councillor Richter, it's not listed as a development prerequisite yet. What's listed as a development prerequisite is that we'll continue to explore the road design and engineering requirements.
Okay. Also, I was wondering, are these intended to be rental units or condos?
Mr. Bracken, I believe that would be up to the property owner. Would that be correct?
I think that's correct, Your Worship. The design sometimes impacts, so perhaps Mr. Jarvie can comment on the design.
Thank you. Through the chair, there has been no indication yet by the owner that they wish to make these rental.
That being said, they could not be restricted, though, under the
That's right.
present legislation. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other discussion, this is again for G2, just to grant first and second and schedule the required public hearing if this goes through. Councillor Ferguson? Yep, no problem. Carries unanimously. G3, 2024 permissive tax exemptions, bylaw number 5932. Get a mover. Moved by Councillor Rent, seconded by Councillor Pratt. Is there any discussion on G3? Councillor Ferguson.
Oh, yes, I think, Mr. Mayor, we did have a delegation today and with an organization that she supported. Perhaps it'd be something that we can tell her if she wished in the future to apply, if she meets a particular standard. And that would be something we could pass on through staff.
It's certainly an
through the
option
chair.
yeah,
Okay.
for the owner to pursue. Yeah. Thank you. Seeing no other discussion, I'll call the question on G3. That carries unanimously. Bylaws for first, second, third reading, and final adoption. Zoning bylaw amendment for on-site amenity areas, bylaw number 5913. I'll move it. Is there a second or seconded by Councillor Rent? Any discussion on I1? Councillor Richter.
Okay, I just had a question about this because we kind of had a discussion similar to this under E6 for the vape direction. And the direction was to have a report, which would then go for a bylaw. The report was requested from January 30th, 2023, but this is actually a full-on bylaw for full adoption now. I'm just wondering, did we skip a step in there?
Mr. Bracken, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't think we skipped a step. I think what we undertook was an analysis I guess, of the neighboring communities to see where we were at vis-a-vis themselves, and also trying to interpret council's sense of urgency or priorities for this matter. So as a consequence, I think we're trying to bring this forward, and as it's in the regulatory nature, I think we're okay to advance it in this way. It effectively reduces some of the onus and makes us more competitive with neighboring municipalities.
So what is the criteria then for differentiating between, say, a vape bylaw and a bylaw like this?
Well, vape bylaws are a bit more challenging for us because there's an interpretation of some of the policy issues and comparable ones. The vape bylaw itself is also challenging because of the impact it has on youth and minors. In this circumstance, we're really dealing with the framework in terms of trying to deal with some of the amenity bylaws and how they would be both serving the needs of the public of all ages and as well trying to compare with other municipalities. And we've heard fairly loud and clear that we were perhaps on a bit too aggressive as we began the process, and this would then return us to a level that we're on more equal playing foot, on an equal footing.
Okay, and so has staff done a presentation of this to council, the changes? For example, this cash in lieu business. Ever since the tree bylaw changes where cash in lieu is permitted so you can actually pay to cut down every tree on your property, what does cash in lieu mean in the context of this bylaw?
I guess there's two parts to that. The cash in lieu means that there is a provision of dollars per meter that would allow, I guess, for the acquisition or creation of a fund that could be utilized on a broader basis. On that comment specifically then at this point, because the matter's here for the 4 readings, because it's a regulatory bylaw, no presentation has yet been undertaken.
Okay. I would like to defer this for a presentation from staff with a discussion on the changes, particularly the new items that are being brought in for council approval.
Councillor Pratt?
Thank you, Your Worship, and through yourself to staff, had a question in regards to the new cash in lieu program. It doesn't say in the new bylaw into which fund that cash in lieu would go to. Is that leaving it up to future council decision to decide which fund it goes into, or is it already established where it will go?
It'd be my expectation that that could be placed into the new budget council policy, that if you wish to do that, could be placed there. Could also be a separate resolution as part of the financial 5-year plan.
Okay, so as we undertake the
Be
financial...
embedded in this bylaw. If we ever want to change it, we would have to amend this bylaw.
Right, so as we undertake the financial planning coming up for next year, we can come
Or
up
the
with
council budget policy draft is coming back to council on September 25th. It could potentially be located there.
Okay.
Okay. Seeing no other discussion, call the question on... Well, you have to move it, Councillor Richter. Do you wish to
Yes,
move?
I did. I said I'd move deferral for a staff presentation and a discussion on the new changes to this proposed.
Is there a seconder for a staff presentation on this? Don't see a seconder, Councillor Richter.
Okay, thank you.
Call a question on I-1. That carries with Councillor Richter opposed. J1, Fire Hall Loan Authorization Bylaw, bylaw number 5880. I'll move it. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Rent. Councillor Richter.
I am opposed to this bylaw. I don't think there's any need to pay for this fire hall out of debt. It is certainly a need for a growing community, and it could easily have been paid for out of the BC Growing Communities Grant and/or township reserves and surpluses. So I don't think we need to take a loan in order to pay for this. And we shouldn't be taking a loan in order to pay for this. The real question here is what exactly are the grant reserve and surplus funds being used for instead, and why? So I'm not supporting this.
Councillor Ferguson.
Yeah, thank you. If I may, through the chair to staff, I just want to clarify some of the comments made. The grant we got from the province, that was a general grant, if I may, through the chair, for purposes which a community may wish to use, if I may, through the chair.
It was restricted to growth-related infrastructure items, typically outside of the DCC program.
Okay, so
And it's audited by the province, typically geared towards growth-related infrastructure or requisition items.
Yeah, just want clarification. I thought for some reason it was just protection services, police and fire, but obviously it's not.
It was not. It was a more general grant.
Okay,
that's right.
if, I wanted to point out that as the community grows, all members of council are aware that fire and police services are important, and as we grow, also the existing infrastructure of many of our sites are in need of improvement, repairs, and new construction. So this is a step towards that. And it says right here in the explanation, it's the cost of the construction of a fire hall. And to me, that's something that the community is in need for. And it makes sense to us as a council, as a growing community, to proceed with these type of initiatives. That's the expectation of those that live in the community. For those of our loved ones that are in need of protection, when that phone rings or when that bell goes off in the hall, the time is of the essence to get there. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Pratt?
Thank you, Your Worship, and through yourself to staff. When we take on this debt, if it's taken on, what are the available funding mechanisms to service the debt? Obviously, typically, we could do so through property taxes, but are there other ways to service debt?
Yes. Yes, there are. Effectively, though, it's a bit complicated because the requirements are that we have a balanced budget. Therefore, what we can do is we can use extraneous funding services that are certain, and we can use those as a funding service. So, say some known charges, some costs, if you will, some user fees, which won't apply here, or we can actually utilize the surplus but replenish the surplus with non-certain funds, such as community amenity contributions. Theoretically, yes, it certainly can be, and I think the intention here is to do so with some of the matters that are progressing before council.
So if I understand correctly, the idea here is to have this fire hall paid for, not raising taxes to pay for it through the amenity contributions that we have? And if that's the case, do we have enough amenity contributions to service this debt or even pay it back?
So I'm gonna take a stab, Mr. Beck, and please let me know if I miss anything. So the fire hall number 5 is within the community amenity contributions policy. It's within the CAC program, it's called. So if we had the cash available, we could use the CAC program to fully fund this fire hall with a one-time construction. The benefit to potentially using debt is that the people that are benefiting from the fire hall 19 and a half years from now are assisting paying for it, either through the operating subsidy required for the firefighters to be in the hall and the operating and equipment overhead that will come along with the new fire hall. Potentially, it will be based upon the growth within the township, and the new residents will be assisting to pay for it. So there is multiple methods of which the debt could be serviced. It could be serviced from property taxes. It could also be serviced, as Mr. Backen outlined, using the authority for the township within the CAC program. Mr. Backen, do you wish to add anything to that?
I think that's a good summary, Your Worship. Thank you.
So I believe it will be up to each council of the year when it passes its budget bylaw and 5-year financial plan to determine how this debt is serviced.
Okay, thank you.
So with that, I think I also summarized my support for this on other occasions. The Brookswood coverage of full-time fire service is woefully inadequate and far behind. And we have a number of capital projects and catch-ups to do, from playing fields for not yet anyway, hundreds of kids on waiting lists for soccer and other sports. We have roads to finish. A number of items have been left for the future to deal with when the future is here. And rather than do one thing, I think it's onus is upon us to find ways to get many things done. With that, I'm going to call the question on J1. That carries with Councillor Richter opposed. J2, highway closure, dedication, removal, and disposal bylaw number 5824. Get a motion. Moved by Councillor Rint, seconded by Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Richter.
Yeah, I was just wondering if I could get some clarification from staff, because the diagram wasn't really clear to me. Why are we disposing of this? And like, is it just that we're selling it to the property owner so they can get more units?
Mr. Beckham?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just I need a moment to catch up here. Your Worship, I wouldn't really necessarily say it's for more units. What I understand it to be is really because we have lands that are no longer going to be needed, and then we have additional lands that could be needed. So the process would be to acquire the lands through the development process and then dispose of any surplus lands has been outlined here.
Okay, so this is just surplus land, but it's a highway closure.
The renderings on page, should be right one here.
It's 82nd Avenue.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering why we'd be closing 82nd Avenue.
It's not the entire road, Your Worship. I think it's only some of the peripheral side pieces that are actually being processed. I'm just trying to refer to the correct map. There it is. Yeah, that's correct, Your Worship. On page 3, it attempts to show the diagram, and it's a bit of a challenge because of the way it's been processed, but it is intended to show that portions are being opened, and then portions are actually later on being dedicated back to us.
Okay, thank you.
No other discussion, call the question on J2. That carries unanimously. J3, bylaws for final adoption here still. Rezoning application number 100543, bylaw number 5686. Get a mover. Moved by Councillor Pratt, seconded by Councillor Rint. Is there any discussion on J3? Seeing none, call the question on J3. That carries unanimously. In a motion to approve development permit number 101171 and development permit 101211. Now, Ms. Bauer, I'm going to move it without condition A under development permit 101211. Just want to make sure we're clear on that. So there's two condition A's. Second part, condition A regarding the GHD permit, which is no longer part of our processes. So I'm moving it without that condition. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Pratt. Is there any discussion on that? Does anybody want to ask any questions about what was removed? Councillor Richter?
Okay, when did we remove energy conservation and GHG emissions?
Mr.
I
Bacon?
I must have missed that meeting.
You were there. Councillor Bacon, go ahead. Mr. Councillor, I don't want to demote you. Sorry. Mr. Bacon, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. That's correct. Going by memory, it was a while ago. We actually removed some of those constraints that were put in place because of some of the complexities of the enforcement.
And I believe it is also in relation to some of these being now adopted as part of the BC Building Code. Yep.
Okay, so then I have to ask, what's the effect of this? By taking this out, does this mean this development will not be, what is it, the housing step energy conservation?
Mr. Brad, I would
step?
simply highlight this is no longer a listed condition of other developments, so I'm making it consistent.
No, that's correct. And to the specifics, I think that the parameters that this was trying to protect for are being picked up by the BC Building Code, which extends beyond simply residential, but also to other forms of construction.
Okay, so it's in the building code, so it will still be done because it's in the building code? We don't have to do it?
In a different format and a different structure, the building code addresses the contents or the substantive issues that our previous regulatory bylaw was attempting to do.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Call the question on those development permits as amended. I moved it as amended. Does that make sense? I moved it without a, yep. That carries. Councillor Richter opposed. Madam Clerk, is that all done correctly? You're good? Okay, great. Items from prior meetings, K1, rezoning application number 100723, bylaw number 5876, for a cannabis retail endorsement at 24th and 200th Street. Is there a mover? Moved by Councillor Rint, seconded by Councillor Pratt. Councillor Richter, go ahead.
Yes, the mover and the seconder of the original deferral are not present here today. In fact, we've got 3 people absent today. This is a very important issue that I think should be deferred until we have a full council. And at minimum, it should be first and second with a public hearing.
Ms.
So,
Bauer, sorry, just going to interrupt Mr. Councillor Richter. I'll come back to you. Ms. Bauer, I just want to confirm, I don't think I needed to do a new seconder, a new mover, a new seconder, did I? Still a bit confused between
As it was deferred.
deferred versus a referral. Yes, so Didn't need to do that. It is on the floor, moved by Councillor Pratt and seconded by Councillor Coons. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
That's correct, yeah, without the deferral component.
Okay, so am I in order to require, or to request a deferral for the next full meeting of council?
Yes, you would be.
Okay, I'd like to do that,
Yeah, so I'll
because
come-
we're missing 3 people on an important issue here.
We've had many things approved tonight with 5 votes, so I'm not sure that, but I understand and had the same question written down. I'll come back to you, Councillor Richter. Councillor Ferguson?
Well, I guess most people know my position on this. I still miss the coffee mug restaurant there in 24th and 200s there. Although and I'm, of course, I'm going to remain opposed to this. But I saw, as I drove by, there is a development permit sign there. If I may, through the chair, does that have anything to do with this application, if I may, through the chair?
That's correct. That goes back to the original matter appearing before council. The deferral then extended the longevity of the sign.
Okay, so that clarifies that. And I also saw a vape sign there, but I wouldn't expect staff to know what that means. I mean, it's just basically, it's just hanging on the street like one of those, wind-driven signs that many people in the business have, any business, doesn't have to be vape. So I'm not sure, what they're doing there, but I missed the coffee mug restaurant. So you know my position on this, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
I do. Councillor Van Popta, go ahead.
Yeah, as I've talked to the applicant, and it was mentioned before in the spring when he appeared here that he's been paying a lease for pretty much a year now, while waiting for this to go through. And I would just rather, either approve it or, quit delaying it. Just nobody's opinion has really changed, I don't think. So let's just vote on it and let this applicant know one way or the other what we're going to do.
Councillor Richter?
Yes, I would like to move a deferral for a full council, because this is a contentious issue, and it will be a tight vote.
Is there a seconder to deferral? I'm not seeing a seconder, Councillor Richter.
Okay, then I would like to move that an amendment, that it be given first and second meeting, and that a public hearing be scheduled.
I'm trying to recall if that's already been attempted, Ms. Bauer, do you know? I don't believe it has been on this one. No, so that would be in order then. Is there a seconder? Not seeing a seconder, Councillor Richter.
Okay.
Do you have any other amendments or referrals?
No, I'm opposed to this, and I hope it comes back for reconsideration when a full council is present.
And it certainly may. Seeing no other speakers, I think this might be the appropriate time to suggest, Ms. Bauer, we've had a number of items approved with 5 votes despite the missing 3 councillors. If you could look tomorrow or tomorrow morning, if you could review any items that are approved with 4 votes or declined by council or defeated by council with 4 votes, if you could email that out to all members of council to allow them the opportunity to move reconsideration if they feel they disagree with one of the decisions here today. And I would actually support their right to reconsideration if they feel that something needs to move ahead. Councillor Van Popta, go ahead.
I find that frustrating. We've had this calendar for a year, and I just find it inappropriate that we conduct business just to have it overturned when people get back from vacation. I'm sorry, that's my piece on that.
Yeah, and I share that. However, I have some sympathy for the other argument. Last term, the Fort Langley outdoor pool was closed with 4 votes. And I was on the opposite side of that and found that to be, I'll just leave it there. I found that to be rather unfortunate. So I don't want to see this council do the same thing. I think if something is approved with 5 votes, that should be the case. And in case of 4 votes, I would support someone's right to have it heard again. Councillor Ferguson, did you have any?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the Fort Langley and others over the years, but it hasn't been that many. But that's just a policy. It's a council policy that we can bring back things, or I'm not sure if it would say we, those councillors that wish to have that right to do so. It's just part of our policy.
And if reconsideration doesn't achieve 5 votes, then you have 5 in support of the original.
Just about to say, if the vote count is not there, then that's the policy has been, what they call exhausted. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Richter, you've already spoken twice, so I'm going to call the question on K1. You've already spoken twice, Councillor Richter. Okay. It's interesting. Okay. Call the question on K1. That carries. Councillor Ferguson opposed, Councillor Richter absent. That would pass by a council vote of 4-1. So if that could be included in tomorrow's email to council, that this was approved by 4 members of council, and that others are notified of that, and if they wish to move reconsideration, that I request that they do so within the next few days. That maybe someone could, Mr. Swag, do you draw the short straw to go get Councillor Richter? All right, we're going to just carry on. We do have quorum. Item K2, rezoning application number 100478, bylaw number 5874. Now, I had the same concern here before it's moved. I think I'll move it as amended. Ms. Bauer, I'll point council attention to clerk's note. I'm not sure how this can be granted first, second, and third reading, given that it does not comply with the existing neighborhood plan. So, it says here, council give first, second, third reading. However, the clerk's note says that it does not comply with the adopted neighborhood plan. So I think it might be prudent to just get through that by moving it amended to grant first, second reading with scheduling the required public hearing, and that would be something council could debate on the floor. So I will move that. Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Rint. So it's on the floor, granting first and second, referring for a public hearing. That's what's on the floor. However, I do have a referral motion, which I forgot to print. Councillor Ferguson.
I was wondering
I do have a referral.
I wonder if I was ahead of you on this. What I wanted to ask you about, the concessions of how the bylaw meets how the zoning, and how we could piece that together and make that work, because doxers are important in the area. I just wondered if either yourself or through the chair can answer that question.
Yeah, Mr. Bracken, you want to see the challenge, of course, with the new neighborhood plan coming into effect just after it was considered by council originally.
Correct, Your Worship. So the referral, I think, is would be one way to deal with it, or to.
It's moved as amended for first and second at the moment, but I do have a referral motion, Councillor Ferguson, which I'll move now. No other speakers. Yeah. The application, and I have a copy of this for the clerk, that the application be referred back to staff to work with the proponent to revise the proposed development to more closely align with the current land use designations, better accommodate and consider adjacent existing single-family land uses while maintaining a component of medical uses and commercial uses potentially accessory to a medical use. So I'll move that referral. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Pratt. Now I can read it again if the members of council wish to see that, but the intent of the referral, speak to it now, is to maintain the medical uses from a direction of council, but have it more consistent with the recently updated neighborhood plan, which had some adjacent uses, single family and so on and so forth, that were not accommodated in the existing design. So I believe we can strike a compromise here with the proponent to maintain this desire for medical use while having them respond more to the adjacent landowners and the community plan prior to a public hearing. Is there any other speakers to that referral? Seeing none, I'll call the question on that referral. That carries with Councillor Richter opposed. K3, move reconsideration. So on this one, it'll be automatically back on the floor, Ms. Bauer. I have that correct? Okay, so that's automatically back on the floor. I moved reconsideration of this because of the referral motion. I made a mistake. That should have been ruled out of order. The referral motion was to send it back to remove the gas station use, which is a permitted zoned use of the site. That referral was not in order, so I brought this back for first and second reading. The bylaw is only for the Heritage Revitalization Agreement authorization. If some members of council wish to see the development permit or the design change, that could be done at third reading or could be done today. So with that, is there any discussion on K3?
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry.
Yes?
It is back on the floor, but it does need a mover and a seconder. As by bringing it back by you, it comes to.
You're going to have to write me a memo on that
I am,
because I
yes.
am tired of making that mistake over and over again. Is
Thank
there a
you.
mover? Moved by Councillor Ferguson, seconded by Councillor Van Popta. Is there any discussion on K3? Councillor Pratt.
Yeah, I think my comments from the earlier meeting still stand, that I don't think that it's advisable in the middle of a climate crisis to be approving new gas stations that are going to be there effectively permanently. That's just my principle. I know that it's out of order in terms of this, and so I'll be looking at a future meeting when it comes time to talk about the DP to see what we can do about it, understanding that we're limited today.
Councillor Richter.
A question through you to staff. Is it possible at this stage for us to require level 3 charging infrastructure in this location? Electric vehicle infrastructure. So hopefully, as Councillor Pratt has pointed out, the infrastructure, the battery charging would replace the gas guzzling. Can we put that requirement in?
Your worship, as it's a development, the equivalent of a development permit with the heritage alteration permit, that's limiting us to form, character, and siting. We could request, but we could not mandate, as the zoning is in place that I think would permit it, but I'm not certain we could require it to be installed.
Councillor Pratt.
Can we formalize that request? Does that require a vote?
You could do it at third if you wanted to take some time with it. This is still going to go through a public hearing process.
Right.
You could do it at the public hearing if third reading is on the floor, or you could do it subsequent meeting. Maybe take some time to get the wording of that. Councillor Richter, go ahead.
I hadn't given up the floor, so I've only spoken once to this.
That's fine. Okay.
Yeah, just want to make sure since you counted.
Well, you took a rather pause, so I moved on to the next speaker. So I
Okay.
can't tell if you're going to continue speaking or not. So I've asked and you don't respond.
Can the proponent be alerted ahead of time that council will probably consider requesting level 3 or the highest level, whatever the charging structure is that can charge a car in 20 minutes, putting that in this location?
Your worship, we can certainly bring it to their attention that this is something of interest to council, again, under the context of the heritage revite agreement and the development permit.
Yeah, I mean, I would certainly hesitate. I mean, I think we have enough trouble gaining buy-in from property owners on heritage revitalization agreements, and here we are trying to layer on more requirements. Certainly open to it, however. I'm going to call the question on scheduling the public hearing on this, K3. That carries unanimously. K4, Ms. Bauer, is this back on the floor automatically?
It will need a, I'm sorry, it will need a mover and a seconder.
Okay, I'll move it. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Rent. Councillor Van Popta, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm happy to see this one come back. These lots in this area were challenging in the sense of them being zoned single family and not consolidated. With changes brought in with the 200th Street 2040 plan, it was important that we address this key area to capture the intent. So I'm thankful to staff and to the proponents in this area for working together to come up with a workable plan.
Great, thanks. I just, this was scheduled to come back on September 25th, but I decided that the original confusion had been clarified on my end, and there was no reason to delay it further. Yeah. So I'll call the question on K4. That carries with Councillor Richter opposed. Mayor and council report. Does anybody have a council report they wish to make? Does anyone wish to have a Metro Vancouver or regional committee report they wish to make? There hasn't been much activity over the summer in regards to Metro Vancouver. Items for gotta be quicker on the draw. Councillor Ferguson, go ahead.
Okay. Okay, I have to say this. We celebrated on the weekend during the month of August, and for the rest of this year, Langley Township is celebrating 150 years. Yeah, you're allowed to clap in the audience, but you're not usually allowed to, but because it's such a great celebration, 150 years, we've had a number of functions in Aldergrove, we've had functions in Willoughby, Brookswood, all throughout the community. People are celebrating, I'm celebrating, this council's celebrating. I thank the staff for all the time, energy, and effort they put into all these particular functions. It was received by all. I was even up dancing on the grass. So anyway, it was a great thing. I want to compliment. I will be bringing up things throughout between now and December about the 150 years. I meant to be a little bit better prepared, but I didn't. I ran into town out of time. So 150 years. Okay, that's the one thing. The second thing is I'm wearing my rugby tie, and I know I saw some members of council there as well. And I brought a rugby ball that I paid for, not like some people got something donated to them. And I used to play rugby not that long ago for the Langley Rugby Club, and I was on their executive at one time. But Councillor Davis is not here today, so he's no longer on council. Him and I used to talk about myself, as Councillor Rint would know, carrying my comb in my socks. Anyway, that is it for my presentation today, Mr. Mayor, and happy 150 years, Township of Langley.
Thanks for that, Councillor Ferguson. Appreciate it. Any items for information council wishes to discuss? Under O. Councillor Van Popta, go ahead.
Yeah, item 7. I would like that added to the September 25th agenda.
So it's a memorandum, so you just like it brought forward more as a staff report and get a,
Just want to discuss scope. I've already had some preliminary conversations with staff. They're going to come back with another report.
Mr. Bragan, this is the first time we've sort of experimenting with this. We can bring that forward under the agenda with a recommendation or council receipt officially to at least give council a chance to review it as part of the agenda.
Yes, under item P.
These are here more for receipt at the moment, but if council member, like, rather than a notice of motion or something, we can just put it on the agenda. I'm not sure how you want to do that, Ms. Barr. If a councillor wishes to have these added to the agenda at the subsequent meeting.
Added to the agenda for, we would actually need a motion so that we would understand what we were adding it to the agenda for.
This one has options presented for funding. That's why I think
Okay.
it's a unique one. It's listing multiple options, potential funding options. How would a councillor add that to the agenda?
Under P, we would add a P1 under motions arising and then just take direction to add it to the agenda for discussion regarding the options.
Do you wish to make that motion?
I do.
I'll second it. Is there any discussion on that? Seeing none, call the question on that. That would be 07. That carries unanimously. Anything else any members of council have under O? Councilor Van Popta.
Item 9. They're requesting a 20-minute presentation. Can we pair that back, please?
Yeah, do you wish to make a motion for a 10-minute presentation?
5 or 10? 5 minute.
Councilor Ferguson wishes to move 5 minutes?
Yep.
Is there a seconder to that? Councilor Rint seconds for a 5-minute presentation. Call it that. Is there any other discussion on a 5-minute presentation for 09? Councilor Pratt, go ahead.
Is there a reason why they asked for 20 minutes originally, seeing as 5 is a significant difference from 20?
I would have given them 10,
I'd
but
be
councilor wishes to
hesitant
consider
to limit them, seeing as they're a significant community
Mr.
partner.
Bagan, do we have you? I don't have the letter in front of me. Do we know why they're looking for that length of time?
Only what was in their letter, Your Worship, and that's all.
So I think I'll allow some leeway beyond 5 minutes
Okay.
if there's a need for that. But I think the sense that council's time is valuable and 20 minutes is a long time. So with that, I'll call the question on a 5-minute presentation. 09. That carries with Councilor Richter opposed. Any other items under O? Councilor Van Popta, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I just want to highlight item 10, although I'm not in necessarily a fan of altering our proclamation policies here. I do want to highlight Rail Safety Week. near and dear to my heart because I am a railroader family. And so, yeah, trains don't go out of their way to hit people. People get in the way of trains. So I just want to highlight that and make everybody aware that this is the time that we observe those type of statistics and keeping ourselves safe. Thank you.
Great, thanks. I'm going to highlight item 03. I want to thank Chief DeRoy, Mr. Bracken, for responding to the provincial state of emergency, and for the members of our Township of Langley Fire Department that assisted Kelowna and the interior on its very significant, serious, and desperate situation. I unequivocally support it, and I think it was a great thing. And again, I want to thank the members that went, and I want to thank the chief for arranging it. And I think it's very important that that process remains apolitical. That's done the chief to chief and the province to our chief, and I think that I support him in his decisions to help other communities. I also wanted to highlight, there's something else I want to mention here. Item number 5, Willowbrook Connector 208 Phase 1 construction. There is going to be some significant disruption on 208 to get that corridor done. And there wouldn't have been a disruption if it had been done years ago. And so we have to get through it. We have to get it done. And looking forward to opening that project and seeing this council deliver that project to the community, understanding that there is going to be some short-term, some pain to get north-south through our community while that road is under construction. So let's move on to other business. Q1. Councillor Martins is not here, so Ms. Bauer, I think we'll defer that to September 25th. Item Q2, Councillor Pratt.
Yeah, I'll move it as written.
Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Van Popta. Councillor Pratt, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I think the whereas clauses provide a justification that I want to provide today. I think it's something worth discussing. Would like if more members of council were here to participate in the discussion, frankly, but I think it's an issue definitely worth looking at, and it should be something.
Councillor Richter?
Yeah, I want to know what the purpose of this is and what the effect of it will be. Like, what's the intent of this? Particularly item number 3, an evaluation of the airport's potential effect on adjacent community plans. Like, what does that mean?
Councillor Pratt, what's your intent?
Yeah,
there?
thank you, Your Worship. I appreciate the chance to get to clarify some things. So, clause number 3 specifically addresses the impact that the nav can. I'm not going to be exact on the language because I'm not an expert on this, but basically the airport affects the height of buildings in community plans that are within the flight path from the airport. So that includes plans like Willowbrook in the Township of Langley. It includes basically the entirety of Langley City's official community plan, and it impacts the level of density significantly that could be built adjacent to future SkyTrain stations. And I'm of the opinion that if we're spending billions of dollars of public money, that we should be able to build the requisite density next to those. And so the idea here is to focus on areas where higher density should go, not on community plans where higher density should not go. That's not the purpose here. The idea is to concentrate where we should. And this way, it would just be exploration. And this motion here is for only a report back initially. And that's a big thing for me. That would mean that we are not leaving potentially thousands upon thousands of housing units on the table in Willowbrook and Langley City. We're different jurisdictions, of course, but we're all facing the same housing crisis. And so I think it's important that what affects one affects all.
Okay, so number 3 is about us helping Langley City get higher buildings? Is that why we're doing this? Because that's their jurisdiction, it's not our jurisdiction.
I'll move on to other speakers. Councillor Richter, do you have anything else?
Well, you're only going to let me speak twice, so I'd
As
like
per the
to-
council procedure bylaw, I don't think it's me.
Okay,
it's,
but
Councilor
you
Procedure
have a
bylaw.
habit of cutting me off when you
Actually,
feel like
I-
cutting me off.
I think you would have cut me off a lot more than I cut you off. Right?
Oh, really?
So, Councillor Pratt, go ahead.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm not done, Mr. Mayor.
Well,
I just want to address the
you
question.
would like to clarify your question?
So the real implication is that the Township of Langley's Willowbrook Community Plan would be affected almost entirely, and I believe also the Smith Community Plan, since I believe the flight path limitations go all the way up to 76th Avenue. So basically, any area that we are going to be building adjacent to rapid transit is going to be significantly impacted. Potentially significantly impacted. And I think that would be remiss of us not to explore how we can fix that, potentially fix that. And it just so happens that, yes, we are, by effect, exploring the impacts on adjacent municipalities, since there's one right there. It's a focus on the township, and that's what really it comes down to.
Okay, so number 3 is about primarily the city, because that's the one that's closest to the runway. Number 2, is this about increasing rental rates at the airport? And if it is, has this been discussed with any of the current rental group at the airport?
I'm going to let Mr. Backen answer that. Mr. Backen, how would you interpret this motion? Would it lead in that direction?
Your Worship, I guess we would look at it as a request to bring forward a report that could itemize the process and cost for the 3 items. One of the topics would then be the economic model at the airport to determine where it stands in terms of its own self-sufficiency, what could be done to enhance that, and at what cost. That would then include the cost estimate of the evaluation for the, impact on adjacent community plans, and as well consider the impact on residents and taxpayers, I guess, and that's kind of a variation of the previous 2, whereby we're looking at both the costs and benefits of well, I guess technically it's of 1, 2, and 3.
Okay, so what would be, in terms of staff resources, like staff time, I mean, to me, the airport ain't broke. Why are we trying to fix it? And if we're putting staff time into it with all the other priorities that this council has given staff time direction on, like, I don't understand why we're doing this.
Mr. Backen, I believe it's for a report, so I think it's a good question to sort of get your feel on capacity. I know a number of work items that this council has requested have now been completed, given where we were maybe in the first quarter. So I think that's a good question to ask, but also highlight that it is just a report to council at this point, to itemize exactly that information, how long that would be, how much cost it would be, potentially what the upside would be. I do want to highlight, however, that it's not my perception that the airport is paying for itself. Maybe you can also confirm as a part 2 response, it's my perception that the airport is asking for a significant amount of financial resources subsidized from Universal Services.
That's correct, Your Worship, and I'll start in reverse order. The nature of the report or information being requested, I think, is something that is really along the lines of how to and then how much. Once we get into the doing it, not the how to, but the implementation of that, then external help would be needed, such as consultants or whatnot, because the capacity does not exist for actually completing it, for implementing it at this point. But to actually do the analysis, I think that capacity does exist, although it would take some period of time. And you're quite right as to the airport itself. Right now, I would say it's operationally close to self-sufficiency. It may be there, but not when one takes into account depreciation or the tangible capital asset to decline in terms of some of the infrastructure. The runway is in need of a replacement, the traditional runway, the oldest runway, and that would, we've been looking at grant opportunities for a number of years and have not yet been successful. I think we're getting closer on some of the grant opportunities, but as you pointed out, those will only go part way.
Do you wish to use up your first time to speak, Councilor Ritter, or can I move on? Can I move
No,
on?
that's fine. I'm not supporting this. I think
Right.
this is a fishing expedition that has no real purpose right now with all the other priorities in place. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Van Popten?
Yeah, I just want to refer this to CBC. Apparently, it is a big topic, and although I really do not like the CPC concept, I think in this case it's warranted, especially given the conversations happening right now. I think any way that we can explore whether our rates are in line with what they should be, doing a forensics on a major piece of infrastructure within our township, I think it is a valuable conversation to have.
Councilor Ferguson, I'll come back to you. Councilor Ferguson?
I'll make some comments. I'll also second that motion when opportunity comes, unless somebody else wants to second it. I did want to think that this is a prime opportunity, even though CPC has been given a bad name. I think we should resurrect that name and make it better. I think it's a prime opportunities for us to sit down and roll our sleeves up and look at the airport. It's a valuable resource for the township of Langley. And I think the most we can do is to elevate the opportunity for this particular facility and let both the public and ourselves know what can we do to make it better, gain more revenues. I'm not sure how long it took to build that tower, but that tower is now built, it's operable. I go there an awful lot because I like Greek food, and I call it airport calamari, but I think that it's win-win-win for us to sit down and really do a number on this airport and improve it, especially with 150 years of Township of Langley.
Councilor Van Popta, go ahead. Make your referral motion.
Oh, yeah.
Second it if you want.
I'd refer it to CPC,
CPC,
please.
is there a second or seconded by?
And can I request maybe not the 25th? We already have a pretty heavy agenda, I believe. Can we do one more week or?
Well, one more week would be one more month. The next
Ooh.
meeting is not till October 23rd.
Oh, never mind.
So I think
25th.
my intent was to schedule this on September 25th.
Yeah, okay, fine.
Your worship, just a caution on the
Yeah.
25th, we
Yeah.
look to start early just for the anticipated agenda, so trying to do a CPC that day would be a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, see, this is always the challenge with wanting to explore something more fully and not having 3 members of council here. There's an added benefit. This would be for a full council on the 25th. Could we schedule 30 minutes of CPC? And if we don't get through it, we don't get through it. But I mean, or we can defer this and then bring it back on the 25th, which would have the same effect, right?
We can do so. Right now, we were looking to increase the start time by about a half an hour in any event because of the perceived volume. There's a number of issues that need to be addressed, so we could maybe start at 12:30 then, and
Or
30
12.
minutes.
I mean, we've done that many times, started at 12. I mean, but you are correct from what I've seen, the October the September 25th meeting does look quite lengthy. Councillor Pratt?
Yeah, I suppose as the mover here of the original motion, I hear what Councillor Ferguson is saying. I think this is a good opportunity to deep dive into it, and so I don't think a rushed CPC in September is necessarily the best outcome or the best course of action. So unless there's significant opposition from council to put it to the October meeting, I wouldn't be opposed to that.
Okay, well, there's a motion on the floor, so we'll see what council wishes to do with that information. Councillor Van Popta?
Yeah, so I'll amend my referral to the October meeting for CPC.
CPC October 23rd. Is there a seconder to that?
Friendly amendment.
There's no such thing, Councillor Ferguson. There's a seconder. Are you seconding that, Councillor Ferguson? Yeah, so we'll open up another one. So that's an amendment on the referral to change the date. I mean, I guess we don't really need a date. The date's at the discretion of the chair. So can you withdraw that?
I withdraw.
Okay, and I'll just agree that, Ms. Bauer, can we do that? I don't want to get too bogged down in all this, so we'll just leave it at the original, and I'll agree as the chair that we'll also, understanding that if this goes ahead, we'll convene it for October 23rd. So back to that. So we're back to the referral, to refer it to CPC, scheduled at the discretion of the chair. And presumably I'll do that if this goes ahead. I actually am quite comfortable with the staff report. So I don't know if we need to discuss the staff report for another hour, 6-7 weeks from now. So I don't support the referral, but I totally respect if members of council want to discuss this further. So I'll call the question on the referral of Q2. And I meant to vote against that, so I'm going to call that question again. So I'm going to call the question again, sorry, on the referral, Q2 referred to CPC. And that carries with Councillor Richter and Mayor Woodward opposed. Any other business? Councillor Richter, go ahead.
I would like to refer Delegation C1 to staff for a report on financial and other assistance that could be provided. Well, I guess I can't even say that. Just refer it to staff for a report.
Mr. Backen, do you need a motion for that? I think we're good. You want a motion, Councillor Richter?
That was the motion.
Okay, is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Pratt. Is there any other discussion on that? Councillor Ferguson.
G1 going to staff?
C1, the request for funding.
Okay, that's going to staff. I just
for,
wanted to
for
clarify that.
Adia Lewis, the first
Okay.
delegation.
Okay.
Okay, just going to staff. Councillor Pratt,
Sorry.
next one, okay. Councillor Ferguson, do you have anything else?
Oh, I just wanted to,
No, on the referral of delegation
nothing on the
C1. Yeah, you got to wait till we call the question on the referral, right? So I'm going to call the question on the referral of C1. It carries unanimously. So, Councillor Richter, do you have anything else?
No, thank you.
Councillor Pratt.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I'm not sure what the protocol or what the process would be for C2 to explore some type of abeyance in order to potentially give a shorter abeyance to get a report from staff outlining potential options moving forward, or if we simply give an abeyance until we have the BC Homes for People plan.
I always like to, as Ronald Reagan, way before your time, used to tell me when I was a teenager, trust but verify. And so I certainly trust the information, but I'd like to get it verified. So I think it's applicable to refer this also to staff to get the information on the file and have that brought back to us for consideration.
My only concern is that the delegate explained that they have until the next meeting to rectify the
Yeah,
situation.
So I think we can look to our staff that if council wants to look at the issue and render an opinion, that they're not going to proceed until they hear from council. Would that be correct, Mr. Backen? We'll wait to hear from council if council wishes to adjudicate this.
That's correct, Your Worship.
Yeah.
We can hold off.
Thank you, that makes me
Okay.
comfortable.
Do you wish to make that?
Yes.
Okay, I'll second it. Is there any other discussion on referring C2? Seeing none, I'll call the question on C2. That carries with Councillor Richter opposed. Councillor Pratt, did you have anything else? Councillor Ferguson?
well, yes, I know that it wasn't in a particular agenda, but I know that, I just wanted to point out, Mr. Mayor, that I know we didn't miss it, but today is an important day, September 11th, remembering those that perished in both the New York City, United States, including Canadians. I just wanted to bring that, the council does recognize that, and I wanted to bring that to your attention. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Is there any other business? Seeing none, I'll get a motion to resolve. Is there any other items for special closed? Seeing none, I'll get a motion to resolve into special closed. Moved by Councillor Pratt, seconded by Councillor Rint. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Get a motion to terminate. Moved by Councillor Pratt, seconded by Councillor Popte. Councillor Van Popte. All those in favor? Opposed? And that carries. Thank you.